Welcome back to D Time by D Corp. In this second episode, I sit down with William Corvera, otherwise known as Mr. Chob. Chob pilots a JZS161 Aristo, otherwise known as a GS300 in the States, powered by a 500 horsepower 2JZ GTE. Originally, he got into drifting with an S14, which got pretty well known from his time with Risky Devil, and before that, he was a Honda nut, owning and working on several Hondas and Acuras. Chob has been into motorsport since his dad originally showed him how to work on cars and has made it all the way to a dream cover feature on Performance Auto and Sound magazine. I've known him for 15 years. I've traveled the world with him. I've drifted with him. I've drinks with him. And even still, this conversation gave me a deeper understanding of who Chob really is and how he thinks about the world. Thank you, Chob, for being so open and honest in this conversation. Of course, we talk about things such as vehicle performance and styling, but we also talk about topics like mental health, financial management, and how to balance a healthy family life with your passion. One last thing, I'd like to give a special thanks to several people who reached out and offered to allow me to use their photos or video in the video background to this conversation if you're watching it on Spotify and YouTube. AJ Gillette from Risky Devil, otherwise known as Ill Photography, offered some old photos of Chob's S14. At D Does Photo offered some photos of Chob's Aristo from 2022. Similarly, Julius at A Dorso Moto offered some photos and videos from 2022. Antonio Alvendia from MotorMavens.com offered photos of Chob's S14 drifting at All-Star Bash in 2010 in California. And lastly, Performance Auto and Sound magazine and photographer Ryan Lopez for letting us use the entire magazine spread of Chob's feature in Pass Mag. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Thank you very much. Welcome, Eric, to the second episode of the D Corp D Time podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I like D Time because it's like tea time, but D Time.
I'm glad somebody got it. We'll kind of, I guess, get right into it. We've already been talking a little bit before this, and I've already done an introduction before that they'll have heard before this recording. So can you give the audience a little bit of how did you get into motorsport? When did you get into motorsport?
So I guess growing up, I've always had my hands in cars because of my dad. He was always kind of the hands-on maintenance type of person. And he had some cool cars growing up. An 85, 635 BMW he had for a number of years. His uncle gifted him a 67 Mustang at one point that we were going to try and restore, but it wasn't in the money favor at the time, so that was sold. But
was he actually like a tuner, quote unquote, or just did the work himself to maintain his vehicle?
Yeah, I think it was more so maintaining our own cars to save money because A, he either wanted to learn it on his own, or B, he didn't trust other people.
Right.
So that was actually some of my chores growing up. Instead of having to mow the grass, which I also did, or take out the garbage, or whatever that kids that have chores back then and these days. It was, all right, your chore today is change the brakes on the Dakota, or oil change on the Jeep, or your chore for this weekend is we're changing the water pump and timing belt on blah, 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 right? So I had a lot of hands-on experience growing up, which is good, right? And I think that kind of segued my love into certain cars through the influence of my friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
My father grew up with muscle cars, BMW, and then I got into Japanese cars through the friends I had growing up, right? Josh got me into Hondas back then. This was, I want to say I got my first ride in his Type R back in 2003. Right?
So was that first ride kind of like, wow, I think I like cars, or were you already going down that path?
No, I was already going down that path because my cousin Joey, who had already been building his Integra back then, and I got to experience that. And then his brother had a 300ZX. So I guess, it had to be my cousins and friends that helped me get into it. Cousins more so getting me into Japanese cars, and then my friends in high school kind of having the same taste in cars, right? We all kind of fell into the Japanese
Mm-hmm.
aspect of tuning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Josh with his 97 Champ White Type R, right?
The
Picked me up from
fabled.
school one time and chirped fourth gear in a stock car, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
What car were you driving at the time?
Ah, man, I want to say it was like a Jeep Grand Cherokee at the
Oh,
time.
wow.
Yeah. And a number of years down the line, I think I got it in 2004, maybe.
Uh-huh.
We came across a black Type R that we found, and it was cheap back then. So we went to go take a look at it. I ended up picking it up, taking it home, and it was kind of my first dive into tuning, right? Because of the knowledge that I had with my father maintaining things, I got to do that on top of learning how to do, I don't know, stuff outside of your normal maintenance box, right?
Yeah, you already had the
Yeah.
bucket of knowledge, the foundation
Yeah.
in your head to
Yeah.
build on.
hmm And then from there, it was mostly just learning from other Honda dudes around the area, right? Um,
When was the first time you went to a track? Well, when was the first time you went to a track, and when was the first time you went to a track to actually drive?
huh. First time I went to the track, I want to say it was actually with Club FR.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I never got to experience road racing in that aspect back then because it seems so, I don't know, far.
Like unattainable kind of thing?
Yeah, right. I felt like going to a track of that sort was a rich man's thing,
Yeah.
or you got to be part of a certain culture, or what have you, right? And I felt like drifting and Club FR was more attainable, at least more acceptable with new people. I don't know how to
Yeah.
explain it, but
No, that's really interesting because that's part of the reason or part of the mission of like D Corp is to make this world seem less intimidating to newcomers,
yeah,
whether it's drifting or even drag racing or
hmm
circuit racing, whatever.
yeah,
So if you look back on that, I guess I would assume that you would say that was silly thinking and you should have just gotten
yeah. I
into it.
should have just went to a track day at Gingerman or wherever, right? But road racing always seemed to have this wall that was difficult to climb, and
Do you think that wall still kind of
a
exists?
little bit. I feel like the mentality is a little bit different, but as I get to know people in that culture, it seems like the wall is a little bit lower these days and a little less intimidating, I'd say.
Yeah.
But
But the only way to, I guess, overcome that wall
just to
is
do
to
it right.
just sign up
Yeah,
and
yeah,
show up. And
yeah.
I've definitely seen there's a specific reaction from drivers that see, oh, he's going to drive. He
Mm-hmm,
signed up.
mm-hmm,
He's here with his car. He's
mm-hmm.
putting it on the line compared to, oh, he showed up and he's just spectating or
Mm-hmm.
he's talking shit on the internet or whatever. And that's not to say that you shouldn't spectate, of course. Like
Yeah.
I'm a huge proponent. That's how I started drifting was I
Mm-hmm,
spectated for a whole year.
mm-hmm.
But that wall is almost like self-imagined, and if you just like
Yeah,
break through it and just sign up,
yeah,
it's like, oh wait, that was totally fake.
yeah, yeah. No, that's true. You should just go for it and take those leaps, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Started working on your own cars from the beginning, really, and you started doing most of the maintenance and some of the tuning on Hondas, is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. It was very, very simple stuff. Coilovers, brakes, exhaust,
Yeah. Brakes. I
interior.
didn't upgrade brakes when I was in my teens, that's for sure.
It was more so pads and rotors, which definitely transformed the car into something that was a little dangerous, I'd say,
Uh-huh.
right? Especially in the Type R, it seemed like it was more of a detriment more so than.
What, too aggressive of a pad that didn't
Yeah,
work
I
on the
think the
street?
bite was too much. I feel like I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but there are a lot of times where I would be too hard on the brakes and the rear end would lift, and I'd have to counter steer while braking.
Ah.
In a Honda and on the street at that age, I feel like is too much for most people, right?
Hmm.
And I feel like I should have not done that at that point.
Well, that's a good segue to my next question was, what did you do wrong as a beginner?
Now, as a beginner in drifting,
Yeah,
right?
you already said what you did wrong with
Yeah,
Hondas.
I would say with the S14 that I wish I didn't cut up the fenders and do over fenders.
Oh,
It was a really, really clean car, but back then I don't know. I feel like there was such a heavy emphasis on front front fiberglass fenders, over fenders in the rear, bigger wheels, this and that, and big aero, which is cool, right? But I think now that we're in our elder years and looking back at things, there's a lot of nice stock metal cars,
yeah.
right? And looking back, I'm like, man, I had a really nice stock metal
And
S14
you
that
didn't
I
even
should have
enjoy it.
never cut, right? And yeah, I
Yeah,
would say that was my biggest mistake.
that's how I am kind of looking at the BRZ right now is enjoy the simplicity
Mm-hmm.
because it will get wild eventually.
Yeah,
But let's just leave that for a different time. Once I end up crushing the quarter panel or something from an incident, then we'll cut it up.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
don't just jump to that because you can't go back.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. That's what I thought. A number of years later.
Walk me through because I honestly don't even know, or maybe I do. You had the Integra.
Yes,
Did you sell that immediately for not immediately? Did you sell that and go immediately to the 14?
I did. Yes,
You sold it to get into the drifting world.
yes, I did.
On the 14, was there anything when you purchased it that you took for granted? Whether it
Hmm.
was a low amount of power or a high amount of power, and it could be good or bad, even taking it for granted. Was it? I remember you talking about it being super laggy.
Yeah,
This was a long time ago, so I don't remember the context and the
yeah,
details of that. But maybe
yeah.
that was one thing where you didn't realize how bad the lag was, and that
Hmm.
changed how you look at things in the future.
Yeah, I'd say looking back, I wish it wasn't that type of build for the motor. It had cams, exhaust manifold. It had a GT 2871R.
But it was the big 2871, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Like
it
the
was.
one
It had
AR
the
or
and it had a
something.
.86, so it's
Okay,
big, right? I think these days people use .64
I think so.
for the 2 liters, right? Yeah. So I'd say as cool as it was back then, it sounded really cool, and it definitely added to the character of the car. But if I were to have started over, I think a stock SR would have done me a lot better.
For your learning
I
progression.
think so. But and on the flip side of that, because it was so laggy, it taught me a lot of footwork and a lot of half clutch technique, which
Yeah.
helps a lot these days with the Aristo or the GS and the way we try and drive together.
Hmm.
I think it helped that aspect of it. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It could have been more simple and helped me progress probably faster, or I don't know. You know,
I
you can go
remember
back and
it
forth.
being pretty reliable.
Yeah, it was. It really
Well,
was.
all of your engines, I hope I don't jinx anything right now, but
Well, the Type R wasn't reliable.
the Honda was the unreliable
Yeah,
one.
yeah, that one we blew that motor.
What?
Uh,
How did you blow it?
I don't remember. I just remember a friend driving it, and then all of a sudden just, and there was I think a hole in the piston or something like that. So it was a whole
Oh
full
wow!
rebuild, and you know, just crazy June motor back then. It revved to like 9600.
Right,
It was pretty cool.
right.
But yeah, with the S14, I don't know what it was. Josh and Simba and you, I think maybe Ilya also would agree to this, but my rev limiter was set low on that motor, and I never had issues.
Hmm.
I want to say, how long did I have that car? 2007 to probably 2012, and no motor work was ever done to that thing, and it was always beaten on pretty good.
And what's your rev limiter on the JZ set to right now?
73 maybe 72,
Which
73.
is
It's really
roughly
low.
OEM, but yeah, not as high
Yeah.
as you could go.
Hmm.
I know I was driving my 1J to a solid 8.
Yeah, and the drivetrain that I have in the GS and the JZ right now. It's good for 85.
So it's built for
85.
85, but
Yeah.
you're running it at OEM,
Yeah.
and it's been rock solid.
But I also don't push a lot in the JZ, right? I think we always talk a bunch of funny business about it and always talk about turning up the boost or whatever, but it's been good where it's at.
I don't know. Over 500 horsepower is.
I could make a good 6, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
That is an important aspect, though, to like overbuild and underrun, and then you naturally get more
longevity,
power.
Right?
Or longevity. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand too about from the OEM perspective is almost everything that a mechanical engineer is going to design is going to have like a 2 or 3x safety factor so that it can run 100,000, 200,000 miles. But then we start tuning them and the manufacturer down the street says, oh, it can do 85. So we push it to 85.
And then we're surprised when it lets go in a few months, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it'll work for a while, but how long does it actually last?
I think the other thing too is that the JZ is limited to 600, or no, the Trans. My R154 is limited to 600, right?
Just you mean the general accepted power rating, level for that? Yeah,
and for me, I feel like the difference between 500 and 600 wheel is not gonna be that much of a difference, if that makes any sense.
Especially for most of the tracks we drive.
Yeah, I feel like it just would be for the fun factor, or being able to say that I have more horsepower than Simba, or I don't know, whatever.
Sure, which is very important.
Always. Hurt, I don't know if I can touch his. He's gonna try and make 1,000. I think if I had the choice between 5 and 800, maybe I'd make the jump. But between 5 and 6, I feel like there's no point.
Yeah,
it's like the law of diminishing returns at that point.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with budget and time and expectations. The more power you push, or the closer you get to the limit, it's going to break.
Yeah.
And so some people will accept that. Like, okay, cool, I'll just rebuild another one.
Yeah.
I guess we are usually
right now.
Yeah. Or when I was talking to Mike, he was saying he always looks at it as like, well, if it blows, that's less seat time. So I better not do that, regardless of budget.
Yeah, you're right. No matter what. Even if you have a ton of money, it's still downtime, right?
Unless you're Hurt, who has 3-4 drift cars.
Yeah.
But I'm actually curious to maybe touch again on that lagginess, because that was, I know the twin setup that I had on the Supra a while ago was laggy.
Yeah.
And while it sucked, it did really teach me something about driving style. Just like a lower horsepower car, momentum, I had to keep the speed up. And whether it was braking on the e-brake or whatever, I had to keep the revs up all the time, which sounds cool, first of all. And I had to do it all the time with that setup. So then when I get less laggy setups, even though I didn't have to, I was capable of doing that. And I remember even with the BRZ, I was like using some of the same techniques when it was not turbo to manage the lower power.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think footwork is a hugely missed style aspect of drifting, right? No disrespect to anybody who has LSs or whatever, but I think when you put effort into the way your car sounds during drift, it makes a different experience for the spectator, even for you, for yourself, or even when you're looking back at videos or whatever. And I think it just sounds different, right? Naoki does his technique for traction and style, and the way he drives, you could see it. And then the way we do things also, it's kind of like also has purpose but style, right? Now that I have a less laggy setup, I sometimes get lazy. I know that the boost is going to build, and sometimes I get lazy in that aspect, and I kind of have to remember to bring it back to the footwork technique, doing clutch kicks in areas where you don't need to do it, right? Just for fun and
for
sound.
fun or this, yeah.
I always make fun of Ken Gucci every time we watch him do Formula D and he's fourth gear pinned and he's clutch kick transitioning, right?
In Formula
In
D, yeah,
Formula
it's
D,
awesome.
making 1200 horsepower or whatever.
Yeah.
It's funny, but it's style.
And I can appreciate this because we are always guilty of, well, keep it simple. You
Mm-hmm.
don't want it to be too hard to drive or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
But I guess, while I still think that that's totally true and the best advice overall, there can be some benefits to having a harder to drive setup,
Yeah.
depending on what is hard to
Mm-hmm.
drive about it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Hmm. So with the Aristo, then,
Mm-hmm.
if modern day Chob could go back and tell Chob on the day that you bought that Aristo, is there anything that you would have, any advice that you would give yourself back then? Anything you've learned in that time?
The only thing I could think of is not to be too hard on myself. I don't know if it was me or coming from the S14 that made it difficult and frustrating to get into the GS, but I see a lot of kids these days taking the GS as their first drift car and having a blast, right? Totally wasn't my experience.
Mm.
I had a lot of times that I would compare it to the S14. Maybe it was us driving as a team that I felt like held me back because I couldn't understand the car back then, or just the way of tuning it that varied from tuning an S chassis, right?
Harder or just different?
See, sometimes I ask myself that. Was it really hard? Or was it the fact that there was no information on it, right? Back then, no one really drifted those, and there was no information other than what you see out of Japan. And
Mm-hmm.
even then, I couldn't read any of the stuff. There's no Google Translate back then, right? And there was nobody I could talk to, really. So it was more of, let's try this part, let's see if it works. If it doesn't, then move on to the next part. Or try this driving technique. If that doesn't work, then try a different one, right? And it was very frustrating back then, I think I wanted to sell it at one point, right? Because I felt like I wasn't being a part of the team in the aspect of being able to be even with you guys, I guess. I don't know
Yeah.
how to like, I didn't want to be a detriment to the team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was because of the car. But at the same time, that's growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um
And like you said, yeah, if you can just accept that,
yeah.
hey, this is going to be difficult for a little while,
Yeah.
then that totally changes the
Yeah.
whole journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I know, well, I was talking to Josh, who's, I mean, well, we all as car enthusiasts go back and forth on different cars that we
Mm-hmm.
should or shouldn't buy in that. And I was talking to him about potentially getting a different chassis because I just made the chassis change. And that was one thing that I told myself when I got the BRZ was like, this is going to be one step back for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully it will be 10 steps forward in the long run. But just be okay with it not being as good. Apparently I was under optimistic on that
Yeah.
because it performs incredible.
Yeah. I want to say it's 10 times better than your
Yeah.
Supra was.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because, I don't know, is the Supra and the GS cars that weren't made to drift?
Right.
Is the FRS and cars like that really motorsports cars where a little bit of tuning goes a long way, right?
Yeah. And the weight.
Yeah.
I've been reflecting on that a little bit recently with the BRZ, especially towards the end of the year when I got more comfortable with it. And I notice how much more controllable that chassis is
Mm-hmm.
compared to the Supra. And I'm pretty sure it's all weight.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was as guilty as anybody to be like, oh, weight doesn't matter. It's totally fine. And certainly, I mean, we have tons of fun.
Yeah.
Weight is only one part of the equation,
Mm-hmm.
but it does actually matter.
Yeah.
And length in your case,
Yeah.
weight and
Yeah.
length. It's
Yeah.
just a big car.
I think that's another thing I would tell my earlier self when I picked up the GS is it's never going to do some of the things that we would expect a drift car to do just because it's huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially the tracks that we do. We do a lot of small tracks, and it's not going to perform in a way that smaller cars do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is something you have to accept as a driver of a car of such weight and length, like you said, right?
Yeah. Have you done anything to the car to specifically try to adjust for that?
Yeah, I tried the whole less camber, bigger tire thing, but in the end, it never really mattered. I think also my driving technique and the lack of knowledge of tandeming with you guys um, doesn't help. So the more seat time that I get, the more I see, the more I do, the better it gets. Just need more seat time at the end of the day.
Yeah. I've definitely noticed that it's any modifications that you've done have certainly they've helped or changed or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's seat time and it almost relates more to just your confidence behind the wheel.
I
And
was
like
just
every
about to
time you
say.
do something like unexpectedly cool or
Mm-hmm.
good in drifting,
Yeah.
you come back and you're like, I didn't even think that was possible.
Yeah.
Now I know it's possible. So I'm going to
Yeah.
do that over and over again.
Yeah. And also another thing that's been holding me back is hitting you, the team, or anybody, right? I don't know. I've always just been afraid to hit anybody or bash my car or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
I think getting over that has been a big helpful change, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hit Melvin last year. I hit you a number of years before, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like every time I hit one of you guys, it just gets easier and easier.
Luckily, it hasn't been anything too bad.
Oh, and then remember in California when I spun out in HTM? Remember that?
Who hit you? Oh, when you went like way off track?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was trying to put it on Gushi's door.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Crashes have a big impact on the car style, and you pay a lot of attention to style.
Mm-hmm.
You were on the cover of a magazine for your style. Oh yeah,
Which we're
it's right
looking at
there.
right now.
It's hanging
Yeah.
up right behind us. I'll have to take a video of that. And
Yeah.
so, is that why you were so afraid of, or I shouldn't even, maybe afraid is the wrong word, so cautious of getting an impact, is because you wanted the nice, clean show car looking drift car,
I think so.
or was it just it was a newer car?
I think it's just because I think I just like having a nice car, right? We go out a lot here in the Midwest. We go to dinner, we go wherever, and
You have a baby seat in the back
I have
now.
a baby seat in the back, which I'm gonna have two at one point, right? But yeah, I don't know, man. For a while, I was apprehensive to taking my car to things like Cars and Coffee or Supercar Saturdays or anything like that, just because it was beat, right? And I don't know. Sometimes I feel stupid for thinking this way, but at the same time, I do enjoy going out for coffee
For sure.
and going to these meets and
And being proud of your car.
yeah, right. And I think that's just something that I have to suck up, right? If I want to progress,
Mm-hmm.
it'll happen. Guess what? I'll get it fixed, right? Which is where it's going in a couple of weeks. It's going back to Mikey who painted the car to get fixed, right? And it's going to be fresh again and just in time for the new year for me to bash it up again, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just the cycle.
Yeah.
And I've come to appreciate you don't want to you're not playing bumper cars, or
Mm-hmm.
the game that we're playing is not bumper cars.
Mm-hmm.
Not that there's anything wrong with that,
Mm-hmm.
but I've always characterized it as we're playing this game of how close can I get without touching you,
Mm-hmm.
which means sometimes I'm going to cross the line
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to touch you, Chob.
Remember the time you touched Josh?
I'll never forget.
Lee, you came back. I think Josh is mad at me.
Yeah, that
no,
was.
you're right. It's just the game we play, right?
Yeah, and as long as you're trying not to hit, hopefully they don't get to be too bad, or they're not too much of a wallet soak, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, what has, in your opinion, set the style for the Aristo? What makes it magazine cover worthy?
Well, like I said about the S14, and one of the things I wish I never did was cut up the quarter panel.
Mm.
But of course, I cut up the quarter panel on this car. So I don't know where I'm going with this. But, in a world where style can mean anything, right? You can do anything. You can go as big as you want, and you can go as little as you want. But I feel like drifting right now, there's a lot of overly done things, a lot of overly done cars, right? Especially in the GS world, there isn't that much you can do to it other than aero, fenders, wheels, what have you, right? Um, I wanted to keep simplicity in mind. I wanted the eye to be brought to certain attention whenever you look at it or notice certain things, right? The color, for instance, the first thing when you see my car is the color.
Yeah,
That
I
was a
love that
huge,
color.
huge thing for me. I think I built the car around that color in this space, right?
What red is that?
I don't know. I want to say it's a Lexus color, but I'm not 100%. It's not true candy. There's only two stages to it. We wanted to keep it simple in the fact that when I do bash it up, it's going to be easy to match, right?
That's something you learned, I remember, from the
Oh my
S14
God.
is don't do candy on a drift car.
Yeah. Everything didn't match.
Yeah.
Like after a few years, nothing matched, which is why I went black before I sold it. It's just nothing matched.
Uh-huh.
So, Mikey, thank you for your beautiful hands. But he's the one who figured out this color that would be, if we ever need to repaint anything, it's going to match fine. So I built that around this, right? Simplicity. A lot of the GSs now, I want to say, have huge fenders. Everyone has huge fenders, minimum of 50 millimeter, right?
Right.
And I didn't want that. I didn't want to have to find wheels that would fit 50 millimeter over fenders as spares. And I didn't want that. Not to say that it's bad, because I really do love the look of it on certain people's cars who pull it off correctly, right? But nobody makes fenders that small for this car, and I ended up buying these fenders off of Josh. These are Car Modify Wonder 180 flares that are only 30 millimeters wide. And I kept it simple. The canards, which are Honda canards, they're Ings from DC5.
Perfect.
We were able to line up the fender to kind of lead up to the fender arch in the back. And then my wing, I think that's another part that stands out. That's not simple, but also is simple. It's Ray's factory low mount GT wing, and it really matches with the rear fender.
Yeah, that's
so. I want to say the simplicity of this car with the right touches of certain detail that stand out is what really does it for me. It might not do it for other people, and a lot of people may think that it didn't deserve the cover, but Past Mag was kind enough to grant me the opportunity to be their cover car.
Yeah.
And I'm forever grateful for it. That's actually one thing that I dreamt about growing up. Import tuner was huge back then, right? Well, we were always in the import tuner, D Sport,
Super Street was always mine,
right? And back then, growing up as a kid in high school, it's one day I want my car in a magazine.
Right.
I never thought I'd grace the covers of one, but maybe they saw the simplicity aspect of my car and what really drew them to it.
Well, I think that's something that's actually really special about it that I didn't even realize until now. And we're sitting here staring at the magazine feature on his wall.
Yeah.
But the video accompanying this should have video of your car.
Yep.
I've never thought of your car as simple because you kind of have almost everything. Like you have an aftermarket vented hood, you have mirrors, you got a big wing.
Yeah.
It's low mounted, but it's a big wing. You have deep dish wheels. Like you have everything except for a wild livery. But for some reason you have tied it together in this, like, everything is understated. You have a big GT wing, but it's low mount. You have wide fenders, but they're not that wide, and they're just flares. They're not the whole fender. You have a hood that, like, from most angles, you can't even tell is an aftermarket hood, but it's got just one kind of drop vent.
And that's why I want to say the paint brings everything together, right? The hood. Most people don't paint carbon fiber hoods, but most of it's painted with a few variations to show the carbon in it, right? The GT wing also painted, except for the end plates. So it kind of gets missed, right? because it matches with the trunk and the roof.
That's cool.
Fenders painted, but I did leave the canards unpainted to match the end plates on the wing, so that those two are kind of actually on, and the carbon on the hood.
That is very cool, and it just ties together with, I'm fascinated by the fact that build lists, especially style, but even performance, has nothing to do with the bullet points that are on the spec sheet. It's just like, how does everything work together?
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't. Very cool.
Thank you.
I learned something today. I'm going to change the subject a little bit and ask something that I'm curious about. We legitimately have not talked about, so this will be totally new to me. I've noticed in the last few years you've started working on your car more often. Not to say that you didn't work on it before at all, but you used to take it to RCN Motors with RT quite often. And I think it's probably been to Togia Factory a few times. I don't even remember. But you've, well, I don't know about completely stopped using shops, but you've been doing a lot of the work on your own for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think it's mostly because I have my own space now, for the most part. And it doesn't really need a lot. It's more so just aesthetic or simple things, right? I want to say that, when I went to RT and RCN Motors, there was a lot of motor work, head work, trans work. He completely did my harness in the front. What else did he do? We did the whole turbo setup, injectors again. I don't remember. There was a few things.
Yeah, you're right though. That was when you first had the car, and there was a lot of big adjustments that were made.
And I am 100% okay with saying that is not something I'm really capable of, right? I'm not that kind of tuner or car person. I'm not confident in those skills that I have, right? Every time I mess something up, I call you. Hey, Lee, I can't get my trans in. Can you come over? I should have never done this.
Well, last time you helped me get my trans in.
True. But, I don't see myself as that kind of car person. I wish I was, and I wish I could do more, but I had the opportunity to have RT and RCN maintain the car. Thank you very much, RT. And honestly, I think it's been so reliable because of him and me not touching it, right?
So we got to watch out for reliability this coming years.
No. So this year and the last couple of years, it's because I have, we bought a house and I have a 3-car garage. Small. Don't think of it as a normal 3-car garage.
A small 3-car garage. That doesn't.
But, I've had my own space. I have my own time. And I have the yearning to learn more, which is what we talk about with growth. And I picked up a welder and built my own downpipe exhaust and everything. And I'm mostly just working on that to kind of keep up just the fun of things, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the important part, is to re-innovate yourself, your mind, and change things up to keep it interesting, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was really cool when you got the welder. I was like, I didn't know Chob had any intentions on fabrication and welding, but he bought one and he's doing it. And oh wait, he made a downpipe. Oh wow, he made an exhaust. And you just like figured it out.
That's the cool part too. Is I think you've seen pictures, and I'm not going to be the one to say what it's going to be, just because I want everybody to see it when it's done. But I'm redoing the exhaust again. I lost the bumper on the highway on the way home from our last event this last year, and had to get a new rear bumper. So we're kind of changing up the exhaust again to see if I can make something cool again.
Huh. Can't wait to see that.
I know.
And then you can work on my exhaust too.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's something I want to definitely dive into more when I have time. It's just I got 2 kids now, right? One's a month old and the other's 2 years old, so it's a lot of juggling of time, right?
So how do you find that time? I would imagine this podcast is as much for beginners as it is for seasoned guys that are running into that same exact problem. We're all is all getting to the age where we're getting married, kids, buying houses, and you're still going to the track. I gave you a big compliment this past summer about your daily is an E90 with baby seats in the back,
Yeah.
and your fun car is an Aristo with
Yeah.
baby seats in the back. How do you balance that?
Okay, so the first thing you want to do is find your a wife that.
Yep. No,
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 seriously.
not kidding though.
No, I am
Seriously.
not kidding. My wife is a huge proponent of our lifestyle, right? I don't think I would be as successful as I am now without her and her support,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, we're at the age where we should be, I don't know, doing other things, right? According to society,
Right.
we're not supposed to be in the cars. We should be out golfing. No offense to golfers, or whatever. But we shouldn't be dumping tons of money into these inanimate objects. But we do because it's our passion, right? And I hope to never stop.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, you need a supportive. You need a support. You need your village. You need that person who has your back, and that is my wife, right? I built not me, but I did the whole process of changing it to red wheels, GT wing, everything when we had our son. Right,
Mm-hmm.
he was. I don't even think he was one yet when that happened, and that's when I debuted it. But because of her letting me go into the garage night after night, not night after night, I maybe 3 nights a week, 2 nights, whatever. We're talking about balance
As
as
much
much
as
as I can.
necessary.
Yeah, yeah. Because between work, the new baby, and having to build a car, you have to find the time, right? So that can either mean getting in the garage when he's napping,
Mm-hmm.
or getting into the garage when he's sleeping for the night, or asking my wife, "Hey, I know this is our time together, but can I go work on the car tonight for a little bit, and
Right.
then we'll watch a movie tomorrow night?" Right? So balance is huge. You want to be able to combine all aspects in your life, but in a way where it's healthy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's where balance comes in. I don't want to spend all of my time on the car because then I'll miss time with my family. And if I spend all the time with my family, I'm going to miss doing stuff with my car, which, yeah. I
Right.
mean, obviously, money is an aspect too. And I made sure to lay that groundwork before doing this change and continuing to do what we do. I mean, you know me. It took me how long to get my doctorate degree that's actually a bachelor's degree because it took me 9 years to get it. Even my
Well,
mom jokes about it.
and that's a really important thing that I wanted to mention is contrary to popular belief, you're not a drug dealer or something. You have a very like normal life. You have an
Yeah,
office job
yeah,
making a good amount of money, but
yeah.
not an obscene amount of money.
No,
Um, you there's nothing abnormal about your lifestyle.
no, not at all. Normal 9 to 5,
Your wife is a
8 to 4,
nurse,
whatever.
nothing
Yeah,
crazy. I mean,
yeah, yeah. I don't have diamonds anywhere that I pawn off when I need to build a car. No, it's
it's just balance, like you
balance,
said.
right?
It's just
Um,
finding out what's in your means. Can you possibly handle?
yeah, yeah, and I want to take my 9-year degree and put it to use for something, right?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I'll never forget the day you told me we were hanging out and doing something. I don't know. I had S14, and it was a funny conversation because you said,
And that would be when we didn't even know each
"No,
other
no,
extremely well or anything.
yeah, I don't remember what it was, what car I had." Anyways, you said, "How's school?" I said, "Good, yeah, doing this and that, cool." And then you said, "Are you going to be in college forever, or are you ever going to finish a degree?" Right? And I think that's where part of the balance came in, is because I wanted to continue to drift, right? But I needed money, so I would still work and go to school.
Mm-hmm.
But it came to the point where I can't maintain what I want to do with the amount of money I'm making. Not to say dead end jobs, but the jobs that I didn't feel like were going to be the foundation for my life.
Right.
So at one point, I had to suck it up and go to school more than just one class a semester and finish. Not to say you need to go to school to be successful, but you need to get that foundation finished before you build your house.
Right.
Right. And whatever that may be, or however you may accomplish that, it's important to complete it because it's not cheap, right? And
Yeah, this is anything but cheap. I know that's a big driver of many in my life
yeah,
for career
Yeah.
is, well, I need to make money.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
lot more to it. I want to
Yeah.
have a purpose. I want to
Yeah.
create cool things, blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah. And that's why I say you need support, because no matter how much money you make, you still need that other person in your life who you chose to spend it with. If you're married, if you go down that route,
right.
to have them be okay with you spending obscene amounts of money
Mm-hmm.
on whatever it is you're passionate into,
Mm-hmm.
right? As long as, my wife and I always talk, as long as the kids are fed, bathed, clothed, we have food and a roof over our head, bills are paid, whatever else after that is fair game, right? So,
Hmm.
um,
Did
yeah.
you ever end up taking a break through in your
No,
tenure of drifting?
I don't think I ever really needed it, right? I know I notice a lot of people getting burnt out because maybe they're doing too much or they're stuck or what have you. But instead of taking a full break where I don't drive, I don't drift or whatever, I just lessen the workload, so to say, right?
Right,
Instead of
right.
doing
You
5 events, three
reduce, but you don't go
events.
to zero.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Or even if it means not going to events or whatever, as long as you're driving your car and having fun, I don't consider that really taking a break,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to maintain continuity in order to maintain your passion, right?
Have you, or do you have any tips or recommendations or anything for money management as related to cars?
Yeah.
Anything that you, any, I don't know, concepts you have, spreadsheets you have, or just figure it out in your balance?
Yeah, never really been good. I mean, obviously, what car guy really is good at money management, right? But I want to say keep your appetite as big as your end goal is, right? I don't know if a lot of people know this, but when we went to Final Bout's a special stage west, it was kind of a last minute thing for us, right? And I didn't really have it in the budget that year to spend whatever money we needed to get out to Cali and do the event and come back. So humble yourself, right? On the nights and weekends that I didn't work my 9 to 5, I did DoorDash.
Nice.
I did DoorDash a lot, and I did it enough to cover my plane ticket and
Mm-hmm.
most of my transport fees and everything. But I think no job or no way of making money is ever too good for
Mm-hmm.
you if it means capturing your end goal,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of people, I don't know, look down on certain things, but I think if you're hungry enough, you'll do anything to make that goal, right?
Right, right.
Money management, though, man, don't spend beyond your means. There are a lot of people who believe that they need their car to be built in order to drift their first event, but that's not the case. Start small, right? Which is what I wish I could have done back in the S14. Is you know, there's a certain fun aspect in order to grow with your car.
Yeah.
In growing with your car is what I mean, and you don't blow your pockets that way. You kind of build as your money grows, and you don't want to put yourself in debt for this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, don't let the internet hype you into making bad decisions. Is
Ooh, there you
is
go.
my money management advice.
Nice. Perfect. Totally different than what I was expecting, but just as valuable. I wanted to ask you because it's important, especially in today's culture and with the a lot of the people that we deal with, and we can edit this out as much as you
Yeah,
want.
yeah,
Mental health.
yeah.
You've struggled with it a little bit,
Hmm.
especially in recent years.
Yep.
Can you tell us? I don't know. Probably not getting into details, but what? How have you managed your mental health, and how would you maybe suggest that other people should? We're not doctors. Don't listen to us, but you dealt
Yeah,
with it.
yeah. I can only tell you my experience and what worked for me, and in hopes that that works for you. Mental health is important, right? You and I grew up in a time where men aren't allowed to have mental health issues, right? And I think that stigma needs to change. We all
Hmm.
need help, we all need breaks, and we all need, I don't know what, we need love, man. Like, it's love goes a long way, but also stress. We as a society put a lot of stress on ourselves, and honestly, like my last statement, internet has a lot to do with it, right? I feel like in car culture, you're expected to keep up with trends or keep up with your drift teammates or go to these events and don't fall behind, right? But that's not the case. Everybody learns at their own space and time, and don't let the stresses of what others are doing around you weigh you down in a way where your passion degrades because of how stressed you are, right? And for me, it was, I think, work on top of my son being born and just everything else that I felt like I needed to keep up with. And I feel like I needed to take a step back and reevaluate what things were important to me, right? Like you talked about taking a break. Did I ever take a break? No, but I took a step back, right? And I think that's important to be able to realize and be able to see. But man, it got bad for me, right? I got to a point where it was scary, and my wife had to call my parents and have them come here and help me. Otherwise, who knows what could have happened? And it's
Mm-hmm.
just your village needs to be there, your support people needs to be there, but most importantly, you need to be there and to remind yourself that really there is nothing expected of you, right?
Mm.
Even though society tells you you have to do this, you have to do that. You really, as long as you're fed and you have a place to live, really anything after that is whatever. It's not needed, right?
It's all a bonus.
Yeah, it's all a bonus to life,
So
right?
why stress about
Yeah.
the bonus?
And I think that's, where sometimes the car culture makes it difficult, right?
Yeah, we're
You
some of the worsts
Yeah.
bragging on the internet about what we're
Yeah,
doing.
yeah. Society these days makes it so difficult to stay in your own lane, right? We see how people are doing and we expect ourselves to be just as good or have just as much, which isn't the case, right? Some people are born with more. Some people get into things at the right time, or some people just don't have it, right? And any way your life is given to you, or any way that your life is okay.
Or I always like to look at it too as, or maybe it's just not your time yet.
Yeah,
It will
yeah,
come. You're
yeah,
seeing somebody else do it now.
yeah,
Keep grinding or keep finding balance,
yeah,
whatever at that point in time,
yeah,
and it will come.
yeah, yeah. And I will say, it was hard. It was probably the scariest time of my life, being that my son is born and me going through this. But take all the unneeded stress off of you. Get help. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to. I'm on medication, right? I'm on medication to even me out, and I make sure not to take on too much stress or make sure to get good sleep. Sleep is a big proponent. I feel like, right? There's a whole thing growing up that sleep is the cousin of death, right? Growing up, that was kind of the thing that we said, but really, sleep is important.
Yeah, I'll sleep when I'm dead is terrible advice because you're
Yeah,
gonna die sooner.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, man, talk about it. Don't be afraid to. I'm a big feeling guy, right? And I tell people how I feel, and I really put my feelings on the table. But I feel like anybody and everybody should do that. There's
Yeah,
no reason to hold it in. Like, what? You're gonna look weaker because you put your feel? No, I think you look stronger by putting your feelings
right.
on the table.
And there's very few people that are gonna look at you
Yeah,
like, oh, just man up. That's so
yeah.
outdated, and maybe it's our sphere
Mm-hmm.
of the
Mm-hmm.
world that we live in, but I
Mm-hmm.
can't imagine a single person that I know looking at me like weird or
Yeah,
telling me to man up or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
They'd be like, tell me what it is. Let's work through it.
yeah,
That's manning up, is working through it.
yeah, yeah. But we shouldn't have to do that.
Right.
And oh, my actual diagnosis was postpartum depression
Hmm.
when my son
Your
was
son was
born.
born. Yeah.
And unbeknownst to me is that 46% of males have postpartum depression.
Uh huh.
Nobody was ever told that.
Right.
Everyone was always told that postpartum depression only happens to the women.
Hmm.
No, man, it happens to both parties.
And I remember you told me a while ago, and you already mentioned it, but sleep. You said you didn't
Yeah.
sleep for like days.
Oh my God. Yeah. When he was born, I don't know, man. I had it in my mind that he was going to die or something, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't sleep. I think I went on like a 4-day streak of not sleeping. And it just, I imploded from the inside,
Yeah.
lost my mind.
And that's an extreme example, but
Yeah, yeah,
I feel like, and I reflect back on my 20s and that, and getting 4, even 6 hours of
yeah,
sleep a night, that adds up.
yeah.
And we think about like children,
Hmm.
especially as Liam gets old,
Yeah.
if he doesn't get his sleep, what happens?
He loses his mind. And then
I
I
don't
have to
think
deal
that
with it.
changes when we get to be
No.
adults.
Oh my God. Yeah. When that guy doesn't get his sleep, it's just terror.
Like father, like son.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny now that, it feels like there is no end when it happens. But now that we had our second baby, dude, she's crying. Jenna has to wake me up. I just, you know,
Are you getting sleep now?
oh my God.
Because he
Yeah.
has a newborn now. So
Yeah, my mom has been a big helpful proponent of that.
mhm.
But yes, sleep. At the end of the day, sleep, and talk about your feelings.
Mhm. Well, the final question that I have: what have you changed your mind on within motorsport or car culture in the last, let's say, 20 years?
Don't be scared to venture into the unknown.
Hmm.
Right?
Tell
I
me more.
think now that I have the E90, I do plan on doing track days with it. How many years later after owning my Type R and making friends in that industry or that part of car culture, I'm excited to not learn a new skill, but just expand my skill set. Right? I think everybody should be able to try different things in motorsport. Um,
Well, and that kind of goes back to one of the beginning things that we said with that wall of just being scared of
yeah,
going to a track day.
yeah, yeah,
And who cares?
yeah. No, seriously, right? I think part of the fear that I had was like, man, am I going to be slow? And now I'm like, probably, yeah. But who cares, right? If I'm having fun, who cares, right? You know, I'm planning on taking the E90 with maybe tires, and that's it. And back when I first started this thing, I probably would have been like, no, I need coilovers, brakes, wheels, uh, seat in order to hit my first track day, right? But
Right.
dude, I'm gonna go in with the stock seats and maybe leave the baby seat in the back just so I don't take it out.
Hopefully take Liam out.
Yeah, that'd be cool, right? I think that's one thing that I would really like to change, or feel like the changes should be had, is just don't be scared to talk to new people, right? Everyone's friendly, even if they have resting murder face like I do.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is everything you want is on the other side of fear.
Yeah, seriously, right? I mean, how many times in life have you experienced overcoming that fear and look back and think that, oh man, that really wasn't as scary as I thought,
Yep.
or I wish I would have done this earlier, right? Everyone is nice until they don't. Don't be fake, right?
Don't
I
be
think
fake.
I think people have a bullshit meter, right? And
Yeah.
that's the problem with car culture. Don't be fake. Do this for real. Don't don't build a car for clout. Do it because you want to. Do it because you want a skill set. Do it because it brings you closer to your friends, right? Whatever it is, car shows, motorsports, I don't know, even spectating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you just want to be a spectator, yo, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Just have fun. Don't don't follow the drama. Don't try and make waves because you think it'll get you more views, right? Just enjoy. Enjoy, make friends, eat good food.
Wise words from Mr. Chob, which brings me to Mr. Chob.
mm,
Where does Chob come from?
Chob came from a long, long time ago, back when I was a little Chob.
A baby Chob, if you
Baby
will.
Chob. No, this happened in high school. I was a breakdancer back then. Not that I was any good, but I had fun, and I did it for about 5, 6 years. Did a lot of battles, going to different places, kind of like what we do with drifting. We go to different places and we experience hanging out and doing this dancing.
But you got kicked off.
Yeah, because I got into cars and I started spending more time with cars instead of dancing. But freshman year of high school, they signed us up. They, being my friends, because I was out, signed us up for a talent show, which we did every year, and I will say was fun. They didn't know my last name, which is Corvera. So my friend, who has set me on this path through my life to put my name down as Chabacano. That's the full nickname, Chabacano. Chob is just short. It's too long. Chabacano, I believe in our culture, means Mexican-esque looking type. I can anyone confirm this? Because I don't. I'm not 100%.
Let us know in the comments.
Let us know. But yeah, Chob for short, and yeah, it's followed me my entire life.
What a fateful day.
My mom even has my name in her phone as Chob. Not even son or anything. It's just Chob.
That's who you are.
Yeah, you're right.
And everybody can find you on social,
Yeah,
Mr. Chob.
Mr. Chob.
Basically.
Yep. I don't even think there's a dot in there. I think it's just Mr. Chob.
Cool.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here for the second one.
I hope everyone enjoyed.